Book 17. Argument. The seventh battle, for the body of Patroclus. The acts of Menelaus. Menelaus, upon the death of Patroclus, defends his body from the enemy. Euphorbus, who attempts it, is slain. Hector advancing, Menelaus retires, but soon returns with Ajax, and drives him off. This, Glaucus objects to Hector as a flight, who thereupon puts on the armor he had won from Patroclus, and renews the battle. The Greeks give way, till Ajax rallies them. Aeneas sustains the Trojans. Aeneas and Hector attempt the chariot of Achilles, which is borne off by Automedon. The horses of Achilles deplore the loss of Patroclus. Jupiter covers his body with a thick darkness. The noble prayer of Ajax on that occasion. Menelaus sends Antilochus to Achilles with the news of Patroclus' death, then returns to the fight, where, though attacked with the utmost fury, he and Marians, assisted by the Ajaces, bear off the body to the ships. The time is the evening of the 28th day. The scene lies in the fields before Troy. On the cold earth divine Patroclus spread, lies pierced with wounds among the vulgar dead. Great Menelaus, touched with generous woe, springs to the front, and guards him from the foe. Thus round her new-fallen young the heifer moves, fruit of her throes, and firstborn of her loves. And anxious, helpless as he lies and bare, turns, and returns her with a mother's care. Opposed to each that near the carcass came, his broad shield glimmers, and his lances flame. The son of Panthus, skilled the dart to send, eyes the dead hero and insults the friend. This hand, Atrides, laid Patroclus low. Warrior, desist, nor tempt an equal blow. To me the spoils my prowess won. Resign, depart with life, and leave the glory mine. The Trojan thus, the Spartan monarch burned, with generous anguish, and in scorn returned. Laughst thou not, Jove, from thy superior throne, when mortals boast of prowess not their own? Not thus the lion glories in his might, nor panther braves his spotted foe in fight, nor thus the boar, those terrors of the plain winky face. Man only vaunts his force and vaunts in vain, but far the vainest of the boastful kind. These sons of Panthus vent their haughty mind. Yet, 'twas but late, beneath my conquering steel, this boaster's brother, Hyperinor, fell. Against our arm which rashly he defied, vain was his vigor, and as vain his pride. These eyes beheld him on the dust expire, no more to cheer his spouse or glad his sire. Presumptuous youth, like his shall be thy doom. Go, wait thy brother to the Stygian gloom, or, while thou mayst, avoid the threatened fate. Fools stay to feel it, and are wise too late. Unmoved, Euphorbus thus, that action known, come, for my brother's blood repay thy own. His weeping father claims thy destined head, and spouse, a widow in her bridal bed. On these thy conquered spoils I shall bestow, to soothe a consort's and a parent's woe. No longer then defer the glorious strife. Let heaven decide our fortune, fame, and life. Swift as the word the missile lance he flings, the well-aimed weapon on the buckler rings, but blunted by the brass, innoxious falls. On Jove the Father great Atrides calls, nor flies the javelin from his arm in vain. It pierced his throat, and bent him to the plain. Wide through the neck appears the grisly wound. Prone sinks the warrior, and his arms resound. The shining circlets of his golden hair, which even the Graces might be proud to wear, instarred with gems and gold, best row the shore, with dust dishonored, and deformed with gore. As the young olive in some sylvan scene, crowned by fresh fountains with eternal green, lifts the gay head, in snowy flowerets fair, and plays and dances to the gentle air. When lo, a whirlwind from high heaven invades the tender plant, and withers all its shades. It lies uprooted from its genial bed, a lovely ruin now defaced and dead. Thus young, thus beautiful Euphorbus lay, while the fierce Spartan tore his arms away. Proud of his deed, and glorious in the prize, Affrighted Troy, the towering victor flies as before some mountain lion's ire. The village curs and trembling swains retire, when o'er the slaughtered bull they hear him roar, and see his jaws distill with smoking gore. All pale with fear at distance scattered round, they shout incessant, and the valleys resound. Meanwhile Apollo viewed with envious eyes, and urged great Hector to dispute the prize. In Mentes shape, beneath whose martial care, the rough Ciconians learned the trade of war. Winky face. 247. Forbear, he cried, with fruitless speed to chase Achilles' coursers of ethereal race. They stoop not, these, to mortal man's command, or stoop to none but great Achilles' hand. Too long amused with a pursuit so vain, turn, and behold the brave Euphorbus slain, by Sparta slain, for ever now suppressed, the fire which burned in that undaunted breast. Thus having spoke, Apollo winged his flight, and mixed with mortals in the toils of fight. His words infixed unutterable care, deep in great Hector's soul. Through all the war, he darts his anxious eye, and, instant, viewed the breathless hero in his blood imbued, forth welling from the wound, as prone he lay, and in the victor's hands the shining prey. Sheathed in bright arms, through cleaving ranks he flies, and sends his voice in thunder to the skies. Fierce as a flood of flame by Vulcan sent, it flew and fired the nations as it went. Atrides from the voice the storm divined, and thus explored his own unconquered mind. Then shall I quit Patroclus on the plain, slain in my cause, and for my honor slain, desert the arms, the relics of my friend? Or singly Hector and his troops attend? Sure, where such partial favor heaven bestowed, to brave the hero were to brave the god. Forgive me, Greece, if once I quit the field. 'Tis not to Hector, but to heaven I yield. Yet, nor the god, nor heaven, should give me fear. Did but the voice of Ajax reach my ear, still would we turn, still battle on the plains, and give Achilles all that yet remains of his and our Patroclus. This no more. The time allowed, Troy thickened on the shore. A sable scene, the terrors Hector led. Slow he recedes, and sighing quits the dead. So from the fold the unwilling lion parts, forced by loud clamors, and a storm of darts. He flies indeed, but threatens as he flies, with heart indignant and retorted eyes. Now entered in the Spartan ranks he turned his manly breast, and with new fury burned. O'er all the black battalions sent his view, and through the cloud the godlike Ajax knew, where laboring on the left the warrior stood, all grim in arms, and covered o'er with blood, their breathing courage, where the god of day had sunk each heart with terror and dismay. To him the king, O Ajax, O my friend, haste, and Patroclus loved remains defend. The body to Achilles to restore, demands our care. Alas, we can no more, for naked now, despoiled of arms, he lies, and Hector glories in the dazzling prize. He said, and touched his heart. The raging pair pierced the thick battle and provoked the war. Already had stern Hector seized his head, and doomed to Trojan gods the unhappy dead. But soon as Ajax reared his tower-like shield, sprung to his car and measured back the field, his train to Troy the radiant armor bare, to stand a trophy of his fame in war. Meanwhile great Ajax, his broad shield displayed, guards the dead hero with the dreadful shade. And now before and now behind he stood, thus in the center of some gloomy wood. With many a step the lioness surrounds her tawny young, beset by men and hounds. Elate her heart, and rousing all her powers, dark o'er the fiery balls each hanging eyebrow lures. Fast by his side the generous Spartan glows, with great revenge, and feeds his inward woes. But Glaucus, leader of the Lycianades, on Hector frowning, thus his flight upbraids. Where now in Hector shall we Hector find? A manly form without a manly mind. Is this, O chief, a hero's boasted fame? How vain without the merit is the name. Since battle is renounced thy thoughts employ. What other methods may preserve thy Troy? 'Tis time to try if Ilian state can stand by thee alone, nor ask a foreign hand. Mean, empty boast, but shall the Lycians stake their lives for you? Those Lycians you forsake? What from thy thankless arms can we expect? Thy friend Sarpedon proves thy base neglect. Say, shall our slaughtered bodies guard your walls, while unrevenged the great Sarpedon falls? Even where he died for Troy you left him there, a feast for dogs and all the fowls of air. On my command if any Lycian wait, hence let him march and give up Troy to fate. Did such a spirit as the gods impart impel one Trojan hand or Trojan heart, such as should burn in every soul that draws the sword for glory and his country's cause, even yet our mutual arms we might employ, and drag yon carcass to the walls of Troy. Oh, were Patroclus ours we might obtain Sarpedon's arms and honored corse again. Greece with Achilles' friend should be repaid, and thus due honors purchased to his shade. But words are vain, let Ajax once appear, and Hector trembles and recedes with fear. Thou darest not meet the terrors of his eye, and lo, already thou preparest to fly. The Trojan chief with fixed resentment eyed the Lycian leader, and sedate replied, Say, is it just my friend that Hector's ear from such a warrior such a speech should hear? I deemed thee once the wisest of thy kind, but ill this insult suits a prudent mind. I shun great Ajax, I desert my train, 'tis mine to prove the rash assertion vain. I joy to mingle where the battle bleeds, and hear the thunder of the sounding steeds. But Jove's high will is ever uncontrolled. The strong he withers, and confounds the bold. Now crowns with fame the mighty man, and now strikes the fresh garland from the victor's brow. Come, through yon squadrons let us hew the way, and thou be witness, if I fear today, if yet a Greek the sight of Hector dread, or yet their hero dare defend the dead. Then turning to the martial hosts he cries, Ye Trojans, Dardans, Lycians, and allies, be men, my friends, in action as in name, and yet be mindful of your ancient fame. Hector in proud Achilles' arms shall shine, torn from his friend, by right of conquest mine. He strode along the field, as thus he said, the sable plumage nodded o'er his head. Swift through the spacious plain he sent a look, one instant saw, one instant overtook the distant band, that, on the sandy shore, the radiant spoils to sacred Ilion bore. There his own mail unbraced the field bestrode, his train to Troy conveyed the massy load. Now blazing in the immortal arms he stands, the work and present of celestial hands, by aged Peleus to Achilles given, as first to Peleus by the court of heaven. His father's arms not long Achilles wears, forbid by fate to reach his father's years. Him, proud in triumph, glittering from afar, the god whose thunder rends the troubled air, beheld with pity, as apart he sat, and, conscious, looked through all the scene of fate. He shook the sacred honors of his head. Olympus trembled, and the Godhead said, Ah, wretched man, unmindful of thy end, a moment's glory, and what fates attend, in heavenly panoply divinely bright, thou standst, and armies tremble at thy sight, as at Achilles' self, beneath thy dart, lies slain the great Achilles' dearer part. Thou from the mighty dead those arms hast torn, which once the greatest of mankind had worn. Yet live, I give thee one illustrious day, a blaze of glory ere thou fadst away. For no more Andromache shall come, with joyful tears to welcome Hector home. No more officious, with endearing charms, from thy tired limbs unbrace Pelides' arms. Then with his sable brow he gave the nod, that seals his word, the sanction of the god. The stubborn arms, by Jove's command disposed, conformed spontaneous, and around him closed, filled with the god, enlarged his members grew, through all his veins a sudden vigor flew, the blood in brisker tides began to roll, and Mars himself came rushing on his soul. Exhorting loud through all the field he strode, and looked and moved Achilles or a god. Now Mestles, Glaucus, Medon he inspires, now Phorcys, Chromius, and Hippothous fires. The great Thersilochus like fury found, Astropaeus kindled at the sound, and Ennemus in augury renowned. Hear, all ye hosts, and hear, unnumbered bands, of neighboring nations or of distant lands. 'Twas not for state we summoned you so far, to boast our numbers, and the pomp of war. Ye came to fight, a valiant foe to chase, to save our present and our future race. For this our wealth, our products you enjoy, and glean the relics of exhausted Troy. Now then, to conquer or to die prepare. To die or conquer are the terms of war. Whatever hand shall win Patroclus slain, whoe'er shall drag him to the Trojan train. With Hector's self shall equal honors claim, with Hector part the spoil and share the fame. Fired by his words, the troops dismiss their fears. They join, they thicken, they protend their spears. Full on the Greeks they drive in firm array, and each from Ajax hopes the glorious prey. Vain hope! What numbers shall the field o'erspread? What victims perish round the mighty dead? Great Ajax marked the growing storm from far, and thus bespoke his brother of the war. Our fatal day, alas, is come, my friend, and all our wars and glories at an end. 'Tis not this course alone we guard in vain, condemned to vultures on the Trojan plain. We too must yield. The same sad fate must fall. On thee, on me, perhaps, my friend, on all. See what a tempest direful Hector spreads. And lo, it bursts, it thunders on our heads. Call on our Greeks, if any hear the call, the bravest Greeks. This hour demands them all. The warrior raised his voice, and wide around, the field re-echoed the distressful sound. O chiefs, O princes, to whose hand is given the rule of men, whose glory is from heaven, whom with due honors both Atrides grace, ye guides and guardians of our Argive race, all, whom this well-known voice shall reach from far, all, whom I see not through this cloud of war. Come all, let generous rage your arms employ, and save Patroclus from the dogs of Troy. Oilean Ajax first the voice obeyed, swift was his pace, and ready was his aid. Next him Idomeneus, more slow with age, and Marion, burning with a hero's rage. The long succeeding numbers who can name, but all were Greeks and eager all for fame. Fierce to the charge great Hector led the throng. Whole Troy embodied rushed with shouts along. Thus, when a mountain billow foams and raves, where some swoln river disembogues his waves, full in the mouth is stopped the rushing tide. The boiling ocean works from side to side. The river trembles to his utmost shore, and distant rocks rebellow to the roar. Nor less resolved the firm Achaean band, with brazen shields in horrid circle stand. Jove, pouring darkness o'er the mingled fight, conceals the warriors' shining helms in night. To him, the chief for whom the hosts contend, had lived not hateful, for he lived a friend. Dead he protects him with superior care, nor dooms his carcass to the birds of air. The first attack the Grecians scarce sustain. Repulsed, they yield. The Trojans seize the slain. Then fierce they rally to revenge led on by the swift rage of Ajax Telamon. Ajax to Peleus' son, the second name, in graceful stature next and next in fame. With headlong force the foremost ranks he tore. So through the thicket bursts the mountain boar, and rudely scatters for a distance round the fright hunter and the baying hound. The son of Lethus, brave Pelasgus heir, Hippothous, dragged the carcass through the war. The sinewy ankles bored, the feet he bound, with thongs inserted through the double wound. Inevitable fate o'ertakes the deed, doomed by great Ajax' vengeful lance to bleed. It cleft the helmet's brazen cheeks in twain. The shattered crest and horsehair strow the plain. With nerves relaxed he tumbles to the ground. The brain comes gushing through the ghastly wound. He drops Patroclus' foot, and o'er him spread now lies a sad companion of the dead. Far from Larissa lies his native air, and ill requites his parents' tender care. Lamented youth, In life's first bloom he fell, sent by great Ajax to the shades of hell. Once more at Ajax Hector's javelin flies, the Grecian marking as it cut the skies, shunned the descending death, which hissing on, stretched in the dust the great Iphitus' son, Schedius the brave of all the Phocian kind, the boldest warrior and the noblest mind. In little Panope, for strength renowned, he held his seat and ruled the realms around. Plunged in his throat, the weapon drank his blood, and deep trans-piercing through the shoulder stood. In clanging arms the hero fell and all the fields resounded with his weighty fall. Phorcys, as slain Hippothys he defends, the Telamonian lance his belly rends. The hollow armor burst before the stroke, and through the wound the rushing entrails broke. In strong convulsions panting on the sands, he lies, and grasps the dust with dying hands. Struck at the sight, recede the Trojan train, the shouting Argives strip the heroes slain. And now had Troy, by Greece compelled to yield, fled to her ramparts and resigned the field. Greece, in her native fortitude elate, with Jove averse, had turned the scale of fate. But Phoebus urged Aeneas to the fight. He seemed like aged Periphas to sight, a herald in Anchises' love grown old, revered for prudence and with prudence bold. Thus he, "What methods yet, O chief, remain, to save your Troy, though heaven its fall ordain? There have been heroes who, by virtuous care, by valor, numbers, and by arts of war, have forced the powers to spare a sinking state, and gained at length the glorious odds of fate. But you, when fortune smiles, when Jove declares his partial favor, and assists your wars, your shameful efforts gainst yourselves employ, and force the unwilling god to ruin Troy. Aeneas through the form assumed descries the power concealed, and thus to Hector cries, O lasting shame! To our own fears a prey, we seek our ramparts and desert the day. A god, nor is he less, my bosom warms, and tells me, Jove asserts the Trojan arms. He spoke, and foremost to the combat flew, the bold example all his hosts pursue. Then, first Leocritus beneath him bled, in vain beloved by valiant Lycomede, who viewed his fall and, grieving at the chance, swift to revenge it sent his angry lance. The whirling lance, with vigorous force addressed, descends, and pants in Apisaon's breast. From rich Paeonia's valleys the warrior came, next the Asteropaeus, in place and fame. Asteropaeus with grief beheld the slain, and rushed to combat, but he rushed in vain. Indissolubly firm around the dead, rank within rank on buckler spread, and hemmed with bristled spears, the Grecians stood, a brazen bulwark and an iron wood. Great Ajax eyes them with incessant care, and in an orb contracts the crowded war. Close in their ranks commands to fight or fall, and stands the center and the soul of all. Fixed on the spot they war and wounded wound, a sanguine torrent steeps the reeking ground. On heaps the Greeks, on heaps the Trojans bled, and, thickening round them, rise the hills of dead. Greece, in close order and collected might, yet suffers least, and sways the wavering fight. Fierce as conflicting fires the combat burns, and now it rises, now it sinks by turns. In one thick darkness all the fight was lost. The sun, the moon, and all the ethereal host seemed as extinct, day ravished from their eyes, and all heaven's splendors blotted from the skies. Such o'er Patroclus' body hung the night, the rest in sunshine fought, and open light. Unclouded there, the aerial azure spread, no vapor rested on the mountain's head. The golden sun poured forth a stronger ray, and all the broad expansion flamed with day. Dispersed around the plain by fits they fight, and here and there their scattered arrows light. But death and darkness o'er the carcass spread, there burned the war, and there the mighty bled. Meanwhile the sons of Nestor, in the rear, their fellows routed, tossed the distant spear, and skirmish wide. So Nestor gave command, when from the ships he sent the Pylian band. The youthful brothers thus for fame contend, nor knew the fortune of Achilles' friend. In thought they viewed him still with martial joy, glorious in arms and dealing death to Troy. But round the course the heroes pant for breath, and thick and heavy grows the work of death. Erlebordi now with dust and sweat and gore, their knees, their legs, their feet, are covered o'er. Drops follow drops, the clouds on clouds arise, and carnage clogs their hands, and darkness fills their eyes. As when a slaughtered bull's yet reeking hide, strained with full force, and tugged from side to side, the brawny cuyas stretch, and labor o'er the extended surface, drunk with fat and gore. So tugging round the course both armies stood, the mangled body bathed in sweat and blood, while Greeks and Ilians equal strength employ, now to the ships to force it, now to Troy. Not Pallas' self, her breast when fury warms, nor he whose anger sets the world in arms, could blame this scene. Such rage, such horror reigned, such Jove to honor the great dead ordained. Achilles in his ships at distance lay, nor knew the fatal fortune of the day. He, yet unconscious of Patroclus' fall, in dust extended under Ilion's wall, expects him glorious from the conquered plain, and for his wished return prepares in vain. Though well he knew to make proud Ilion bend was more than heaven had destined to his friend. Perhaps to him this Thetis had revealed, the rest, in pity to her son, concealed. Still raged the conflict round the hero dead, and heaps on heaps by mutual wounds they bled. Cursed be the man, even private Greeks would say, who dares desert this well-disputed day. First may the cleaving earth before our eyes gape wide, and drink our blood for sacrifice. First perish all ere haughty Troy shall boast, we lost Patroclus, and our glory lost. Thus they, while with one voice the Trojans said, grant this day, Jove, or heap us on the dead. Then clash their sounding arms. The clangors rise, and shake the brazen concave of the skies. Meantime, at distance from the scene of blood, the pensive steeds of great Achilles stood, their godlike master slain before their eyes. They wept, and shared in human miseries. 248. In vain Automedon now shakes the rein, now plies the lash, and soothes and threats in vain. Nor to the fight nor Hellespont they go, restive they stood, and obstinate in woe. Still as a tombstone, never to be moved, on some good man or woman unreproved, lays its eternal weight, or fixed as stands. A marble courser by the sculptor's hands, placed on the hero's grave. Along their face, the big round drops course down with silent pace, conglobing on the dust. Their manes that late circled their arched necks, and waved in state, trailed on the dust beneath the yoke were spread, and prone to earth was hung their languid head. Nor Jove disdained to cast a pitying look, while thus relenting to the steeds he spoke. Unhappy coursers of immortal strain, exempt from age, and deathless, now in vain, did we your race on mortal man bestow, only, alas, to share in mortal woe? For what is there of inferior birth, that breathes or creeps upon the dust of earth? What wretched creature of what wretched kind, than man more weak, calamitous and blind? A miserable race, but cease to mourn, for not by you shall Priam's son be born. High on the splendid car, one glorious prize, he rashly boasts, the rest our will denies. Ourself will swiftness to your nerves impart, ourself with rising spirits swell your heart. Automedon your rapid flight shall bear, safe to the navy through the storm of war. For yet, 'tis given to Troy to ravage o'er the field, and spread her slaughters to the shore. The sun shall see her conquer, till his fall with sacred darkness shades the face of all. He said, and breathing in the immortal horse, excessive spirit, urged them to the course. From their high manes they shake the dust, and bear the kindling chariot through the parted war. So flies a vulture through the clamorous train of geese that scream and scatter round the plain. From danger now with swiftest speed they flew, and now to conquest with like speed pursue. Sole in the seat the charioteer remains, now plies the javelin, now directs the reins. Him brave Alcimedon beheld distressed, approached the chariot, and the chief addressed. What god provokes thee rashly thus to dare, alone, unaided, in the thickest war? Alas, thy friend is slain and Hector wields Achilles' arms triumphant in the fields. In happy time, the charioteer replies, the bold Alcimedon now greets my eyes. No Greek like him the heavenly steeds restrains, or holds their fury in suspended reins. Patroclus, while he lived, their rage could tame, but now Patroclus is an empty name. To thee I yield the seat, to thee resign the ruling charge, the task of fight be mine, he said. Alcimedon with active heat snatches the reins and vaults into the seat. His friend descends, the chief of Troy descried, and called Aeneas fighting near his side. Lo, to my sight, beyond our hope restored, Achilles' car, deserted of its lord. The glorious steeds our ready arms invite, scarce their weak drivers guide them through the fight. Can such opponents stand when we assail? Unite thy force, my friend, and we prevail. The son of Venus to the council yields. Then o'er their backs they spread their solid shields. With brass refulgent the broad surface shined, and thick bull hides the spacious concave lined. Them Chromius follows, Aretus succeeds. Each hopes the conquest of the lofty steeds. In vain, brave youths, with glorious hopes ye burn. In vain advance, not fated to return. Unmoved, Automedon attends the fight, implores the eternal, and collects his might. Then turning to his friend with dauntless mind, oh, keep the foaming coursers close behind. Full on my shoulders let their nostrils blow. For hard the fight, determined is the foe. 'Tis Hector comes, and when he seeks the prize, war knows no mean. He wins it or he dies. Then through the field he sends his voice aloud, and calls the Ajaces from the warring crowd. With great Atrides, hither turn, he said, turn where distress demands immediate aid. The dead, encircled by his friends, forgo, and save the living from a fiercer foe. Unhelped we stand, unequal to engage the force of Hector and Aeneas' rage. Yet mighty as they are, my force to prove is only mine. The event belongs to Jove. He spoke, and high the sounding javelin flung, which passed the shield of Aretus the young. It pierced his belt, embossed with curious art, then in the lower belly struck the dart, as when a ponderous axe, descending full, cleaves the broad forehead of some brawny bull. Frowny face 249, struck twixt the horns. He springs with many a bound, then tumbling rolls enormous on the ground. Thus fell the youth. The air his soul received, and the spear trembled as his entrails heaved. Now at Automedon the Trojan foe discharged his lance. The meditated blow, stooping, he shunned. The javelin idly fled, and hissed innoxious o'er the hero's head. Deep-rooted in the ground the forceful spear, in long vibrations spent its fury there. With clashing falchions now the chiefs had closed, but each brave Ajax heard, and interposed. Nor longer Hector with his Trojans stood, but left their slain companion in his blood. His arms Automedon divests and cries, accept, Patroclus, this mean sacrifice. Thus have I soothed my griefs, and thus have paid, poor as it is, some offering to thy shade. So looks the lion o'er a mangled boar, all grim with rage, and horrible with gore. High on the chariot at one bound he sprung, and o'er his seat the bloody trophies hung. And now Minerva from the realms of air descends impetuous and renews the war. For, pleased at length the Grecian arms to aid, the Lord of Thunders sent the blue-eyed maid. As when high Jove denouncing future woe, o'er the dark clouds extends his purple bow, in sign of tempests from the troubled air, or from the rage of man, destructive war. The drooping cattle dread the impending skies, and from his half-tilled field the laborer flies. In such a form the goddess round her drew a livid cloud, and to the battle flew. Assuming phoenix shape on earth she falls, and in his well-known voice to Sparta calls. And lies Achilles' friend, beloved by all, a prey to dogs beneath the Trojan wall? What shame, O Greece, for future times to tell, to thee the greatest in whose cause he fell. O chief, O father, Atreus' son replies, O full of days, by long experience wise, what more desires my soul than here unmoved, to guard the body of the man I loved? Ah, would Minerva send me strength to rear this wearied arm, and ward the storm of war. But Hector, like the rage of fire we dread, and Jove's own glories blaze around his head, pleased to be first of all the powers addressed. She breathes new vigor in her hero's breast, and fills with keen revenge, with fell despite, desire of blood, and rage, and lust of fight. So burns the vengeful hornet, soul all o'er, repulsed in vain, and thirsty still of gore. Bold son of air and heat, on angry wings, untamed, untired, he turns, attacks, and stings. Fired with like ardor fierce Atrides flew, and sent his soul with every lance he threw. There stood a Trojan, not unknown to fame, Aetion's son, and Podes was his name, with riches honored, and with courage blessed, by Hector loved, his comrade, and his guest. Through his broad belt the spear a passage found, and, ponderous as he falls, his arms resound. Sudden at Hector's side Apollo stood, like Phaenops, Asia's son, appeared the god, Asius the great, who held his wealthy reign, in fair Abydos by the rolling main. O prince, he cried, O foremost once in fame, what Grecian now shall tremble at thy name? Dost thou at length to Menelaus yield, a chief once thought no terror of the field? Yet singly now the long-disputed prize he bears victorious, while our army flies. By the same arm illustrious Podes bled. The friend of Hector, unrevenged, is dead. This heard, o'er Hector spreads a cloud of woe. Rage lifts his lance and drives him on the foe. But now the Eternal shook his sable shield, that shaded-eyed and all the subject field. Beneath its ample verge, a rolling cloud involved the mount. The thunder roared aloud. The affrighted hills from their foundations gnawed, and blazed beneath the lightnings of the god. At one regard of his all-seeing eye, the vanquished triumph and the victors fly. Then trembled Greece. The flight Peneleus led, for as the brave Boeotian turned his head to face the foe, Polydamas drew near, and raised his shoulder with a shortened spear. By Hector wounded, Leotus quits the plain, pierced through the wrist, and raging with the pain, grasps his once formidable lance in vain. As Hector followed, Idomen addressed the flaming javelin to his manly breast. The brittle point before his corslet yields. Exulting Troy with clamor fills the fields. High on his chariots the Cretans stood, the son of Priam whirled the massive wood. But erring from its aim, the impetuous spear struck to the dust the squire and charioteer of martial Marion, Coeranus his name, who left fair Lyctus for the fields of fame. On foot bold Marion fought, and now laid low, had graced the triumphs of his Trojan foe. But the brave squire the ready coursers brought, and with his life his master's safety bought. Between his cheek and ear the weapon went, the teeth it shattered, and the tongue it rent. Prone from the seat he tumbles to the plain. His dying hand forgets the falling rain. This Marion reaches, bending from the car, and urges to desert the hopeless war. Idomeneus consents. The lash applies, and the swift chariot to the navy flies. Not Ajax less the will of heaven descried, and conquest shifting to the Trojan side, turned by the hand of Jove. Then thus begun, to Atreus' seed, the godlike Telamon. Alas, who sees not Jove's almighty hand, transfers the glory to the Trojan band? Whether the weak or strong discharge the dart, he guides each arrow to a Grecian heart. Not so our spears. Incessant though they rain, he suffers every lance to fall in vain. deserted of the god, yet let us try what human strength and prudence can supply. If yet this honored course, in triumph borne, may glad the fleets that hope not our return, who tremble yet, scarce rescued from their fates, and still hear Hector thundering at their gates. Some hero too must be dispatched to bear the mournful message to Pelides' ear, for sure he knows not, distant on the shore, his friend, his loved Patroclus, is no more. But such a chief I spy not through the host. The men, the steeds, the armies, all are lost in general darkness. Lord of earth and air, O King, O Father, hear my humble prayer. Dispel this cloud, the light of heaven restore. Give me to see, and Ajax asks no more. If Greece must perish, we thy will obey. But let us perish in the face of day. With tears the hero spoke, and at his prayer, the god relenting cleared the clouded air. Forth burst the sun with all enlightening ray. The blaze of armor flashed against the day. Now, Atrides, cast around thy sight. If yet Antilochus survives the fight, let him to great Achilles' ear convey the fatal news. Atrides hastes away. So turns the lion from the nightly fold, though high in courage and with hunger bold, long galled by herdsmen, and long vexed by hounds, stiff with fatigue, and fretted sore with wounds. The darts fly round him from 100 hands, and the red terrors of the blazing brands, till late, reluctant, at the dawn of day, sour he departs, and quits the untasted prey. So moved Atrides from his dangerous place, with weary limbs, but with unwilling pace. The foe he feared might yet Patroclus gain, and much admonished, much adjured his train. O guard these relics to your charge consigned, and bear the merits of the dead in mind. How skilled he was in each obliging art, the mildest manners, and the gentlest heart. He was, alas, but fate decreed his end. In death a hero, as in life a friend, so parts the chief. From rank to rank he flew, and round on all sides sent his piercing view. As the bold bird, endued with sharpest eye, of all that wings the mid-aerial sky, the sacred eagle from his walks above, looks down, and sees the distant thicket move, then stoops, and sousing on the quivering hair, snatches his life amid the clouds of air. Not with less quickness his exerted sight passed this and that way through the ranks of fight, till on the left the chief he sought he found, cheering his men and spreading deaths around. To him the king, beloved of Jove, draw near, for sadder tidings never touched thy ear. Thy eyes have witnessed what a fatal turn, how Ilion triumphs, and the Achaeans mourn. This is not all, Patroclus on the shore, now pale and dead, shall succor Greece no more. Fly to the fleet this instant, fly and tell the sad Achilles how his loved one fell. He too may haste the naked course to gain. The arms are Hector's, who despoiled the slain. The youthful warrior heard with silent woe. From his fair eyes the tears began to flow. Big with the mighty grief he strove to say what sorrow dictates, but no word found way. To brave Laodocus his arms he flung, who, near him wheeling, drove his steeds along. Then ran the mournful message to impart, with tearful eyes, and with dejected heart. Swift fled the youth, nor Menelaus stands, though sore distressed, to aid the Pylian bands, but bids bold Thrasimede those troops sustain. Himself returns to his Patroclus slain. Gone is Antilochus, the hero said, but hope not, warriors, for Achilles' aid. Though fierce his rage, unbounded be his woe, unarmed he fights not with the Trojan foe. 'Tis in our hands alone our hopes remain. 'Tis our own vigor must the dead regain, and save ourselves while with impetuous hate Troy pours along, and this way rolls our fate. 'Tis well, said Ajax, be it then thy care, with Merion's aid, the weighty course to rear. Myself and my bold brother will sustain the shock of Hector and his charging train. Nor fear we armies, fighting side by side, What Troy can dare we have already tried, have tried it and have stood. The hero said. High from the ground the warriors heave the dead. A general clamor rises at the sight. Loud shout the Trojans and renew the fight. Not fiercer rush along the gloomy wood, with rage insatiate, and with thirst of blood, voracious hounds that many a length before, their furious hunters, drive the wounded boar. But if the savage turns his glaring eye, they howl aloof and round the forest fly. Thus on retreating Greece the Trojans pour, wave their thick falchions, and their javelins shower. But Ajax turning, to their fears they yield, all pale they tremble and forsake the field. While thus aloft the hero's course they bear, behind them rages all the storm of war. Confusion, tumult, horror, o'er the throng of men, steeds, chariots, urged the rout along. Less fierce the winds with rising flames conspire, to whelm some city under waves of fire. Now sink in gloomy clouds the proud abodes, now crack the blazing temples of the gods. The rumbling torrent through the ruin rolls, and sheets of smoke mount heavy to the poles. The heroes sweat beneath their honored load, as when two mules, along the rugged road, from the steep mountain with exerted strength, drag some vast beam, or mast's unwieldy length. Inly they groan, big drops of sweat distill, the enormous timber lumbering down the hill. So these, behind, the bulk of Ajax stands, and breaks the torrent of the rushing bands. Thus when a river swelled with sudden rains, spreads his broad waters o'er the level plains, some interposing hill the stream divides, and breaks its force, and turns the winding tides. Still close they follow, close the rear engage. Aeneas storms, and Hector foams with rage, while Greece a heavy, thick retreat maintains, wedged in one body, like a flight of cranes, that shriek incessant, while the falcon, hung high on poised pinions, threats their callow young. So from the Trojan chiefs the Grecians fly, such the wild terror and the mingled cry. Within, without the trench and all the way, strode in bright heaps, their arms and armor lay. Such horror Jove impressed, yet still proceeds, the work of death, and still the battle bleeds. Book 18. Argument. The grief of Achilles, and new armor made him by Vulcan. The news of the death of Patroclus is brought to Achilles by Antilochus. Thetis, hearing his lamentations, comes with all her sea nymphs to comfort him. The speeches of the mother and son on this occasion. Iris appears to Achilles by the command of Juno, and orders him to show himself at the head of the entrenchments. The sight of him turns the fortunes of the day, and the body of Patroclus is carried off by the Greeks. The Trojans call a council, where Hector and Polydamas disagree in their opinions, but the advice of the former prevails, to remain encamped in the field. The grief of Achilles over the body of Patroclus. Thetis goes to the palace of Vulcan to obtain new arms for her son. The description of the wonderful works of Vulcan, and, lastly, that noble one of the shield of Achilles. The latter part of the 29th day, and the night ensuing, take up this book. The scene is at Achilles' tent on the seashore, from whence it changes to the palace of Vulcan. Thus like the rage of fire the combat burns. 250. And now it rises, now it sinks by turns. Meanwhile, where Hellespont's broad waters flow, stood Nestor's son, the messenger of woe. There sat Achilles, shaded by his sails, on hoisted yards extended to the gales. Pensive he sat, for all that fate designed rose in sad prospect to his boding mind. Thus to his soul he said, Ah, what constrains the Greeks, late victors, now to quit the plains? Is this the day which heaven so long ago ordained to sink me with the weight of woe? So Thetis warned Winkyface when by a Trojan hand the bravest of the Myrmidonian band should lose the light. Fulfilled is that decree. Fallen is the warrior and Patroclus he. In vain I charged him soon to quit the plain, and warned to shun Hectorian force in vain. Thus while he thinks, Antilochus appears, and tells the melancholy tale with tears. Sad tidings, son of Peleus, thou must hear, and wretched I, the unwilling messenger. Dead is Patroclus. For his course they fight, his naked course. His arms are Hector's right. A sudden horror shot through all the chief, and wrapped his senses in the cloud of grief. Cast on the ground, with furious hands he spread the scorching ashes o'er his graceful head. His purple garments and his golden hairs, those he deforms with dust, and these he tears. On the hard soil his groaning breast he threw, and rolled and grovelled as to earth he grew. The virgin captives, with disordered charms, won by his own, or by Patroclus' arms, rushed from their tents with cries, and gathering round, beat their white breasts, and fainted on the ground. While Nestor's son sustains a manlier part, and mourns the warrior with a warrior's heart, hangs on his arms, amidst his frantic woe, and oft prevents the meditated blow. Far in the deep abysses of the main, 251, with hoary Nereus and the watery train, the mother goddess from her crystal throne heard his loud cries, and answered groan for groan. The circling Nereids with their mistress weep, and all the sea-green sisters of the deep. Talia, glossy, every watery name, Nicaea mild and Silverspio came. Cymotho and Cymodos were nigh, and the blue languish of soft Alia's eye. Their locks Actaeae and Limnoria rear, then Proto, Doris, Panope appear. Thoa, Pharusa, Doto, Melita, Agave gentle and Amphitho gay. Next Callianera Callianassa show their sister looks. Dexamene the slow, and swift Dynamene, now cut the tides. Aera now the verdant wave divides. Nemertes with Apsudes lifts the head. Bright Galatea quits her pearly bed. These Erythia, Clymene, attend. Mera, Amphinome the train extend. And black Genira, and Genassa fair, and Amathea with her amber hair. All these and all that deep in ocean held their sacred seats, the glimmering grotto filled. Each beat her ivory breast with silent woe, till Thetis' sorrows thus began to flow. Hear me, and judge, ye sisters of the main, how just a cause has Thetis to complain. How wretched, were I mortal were my fate, how more than wretched in the immortal state. Sprung from my bed a godlike hero came, the bravest far that ever bore the name. Like some fair olive by my careful hand, he grew, he flourished and adorned the land. To Troy I sent him, but the fates ordain he never, never must return again. So short a space the light of heaven to view, so short, alas, and filled with anguish too. Hear how his sorrows echo through the shore. I cannot ease them, but I must deplore. I go at least to bear a tender part, and mourn my loved one with a mother's heart. She said, and left the caverns of the main, all bathed in tears. The melancholy train tend her way, wide opening part the tides, while the long pomp the silver wave divides. Approaching now, they touched the Trojan land, then 2 by 2 ascended up the strand. The immortal mother standing close beside, her mournful offspring, to his sighs replied. Along the coast their mingled clamors ran, and thus the silver-footed dame began. Why mourns my son? Thy late preferred request the god has granted, and the Greeks distressed. Why mourns my son? Thy anguish let me share. Reveal the cause, and trust a parent's care. He, deeply groaning, to this cureless grief, not even the thunderer's favor brings relief. Patroclus, ah, say goddess, can I boast pleasure now? Revenge itself is lost. Patroclus, loved of all my martial train, beyond mankind, beyond myself is slain. Lost are those arms the gods themselves bestowed. On Peleus, Hector bears the glorious load. Cursed be that day when all the powers above thy charms submitted to a mortal love. O hadst thou still, a sister of the main, pursued the pleasures of the watery reign, and happier Peleus, less ambitious, led a mortal beauty to his equal bed, ere the sad fruit of thy unhappy womb had caused such sorrows past, and woes to come. For soon, alas, that wretched offspring slain, New woes, new sorrows, shall create again. 'Tis not in fate the alternate now to give. Patroclus dead, Achilles hates to live. Let me revenge it on proud Hector's heart. Let his last spirit smoke upon my dart. On these conditions will I breathe. Till then, I blush to walk among the race of men. A flood of tears, at this, the goddess shed. Ah then, I see thee dying, see thee dead. When Hector falls, thou deest. Let Hector die, and let me fall. Achilles made reply. Far lies Patroclus from his native plain. He fell and falling wished my aid in vain. Ah then, since from this miserable day, I cast all hope of my return away, since, unrevenged, 100 ghosts demand the fate of Hector from Achilles' hand, since here, for brutal courage far renowned, I live an idle burden to the ground, others in council famed for nobler skill, more useful to preserve than I to kill. Let me, but oh, ye gracious powers above, wrath and revenge from men and gods remove. Far, far too dear to every mortal breast, sweet to the soul, as honey to the taste, gathering like vapors of a noxious kind, from fiery blood, and darkening all the mind. Me Agamemnon urged to deadly hate. 'Tis past, I quell it, I resign to fate. Yes, I will meet the murderer of my friend, or, if the gods ordain it, meet my end. The stroke of fate the strongest cannot shun. The great Alcides, Jove's unequalled son, to Juno's hate, at length resigned his breath, and sunk the victim of all-conquering death. So shall Achilles fall, stretched pale and dead, no more the Grecian hope, or Trojan dread. Let me this instant rush into the fields, and reap what glory life's short harvest yields. Shall I not force some widowed dame to tear, with frantic hands, her long disheveled hair? Shall I not force her breast to heave with sighs, and the soft tears to trickle from her eyes? Yes, I shall give the fair those mournful charms. In vain you hold me. Hence, my arms, my arms! Soon shall the sanguine torrent spread so wide, that all shall know Achilles swells the tide. My son, Coerulean Thetis made reply, to fate submitting with a secret sigh. The host to succor, and thy friends to save, is worthy thee, the duty of the brave. But canst thou, naked, issue to the plains? Thy radiant arms the Trojan foe detains. Insulting Hector bears the spoils on high, but vainly glories, for his fate is nigh. Yet a while thy generous ardor stay. Assured, I meet thee at the dawn of day, charged with refulgent arms, a glorious load. Vulcanian arms, the labor of a god. Then turning to the daughters of the main, the goddess thus dismissed her azure train. Ye sister Nereids, to your deeps descend. Haste, and our Father's sacred seat attend. I go to find the architect divine, where vast Olympus' starry summits shine. So tell our hoary sire. This charge she gave. The sea-green sisters plunge beneath the wave. Thetis once more ascends the blessed abodes, and treads the brazen threshold of the gods. And now the Greeks from furious Hector's force urge to broad Hellespont their headlong course, nor yet their chief's Patroclus' body bore, safe through the tempest to the tented shore. The horse, the foot, with equal fury joined, poured on the rear, and thundered close behind, and like a flame through fields of ripened corn, the rage of Hector o'er the ranks was borne. Thrice the slain hero by the foot he drew, thrice to the skies the Trojan clamors flew, as oft the Ajaces his assault sustain, but checked, he turns. Repulsed, attacks again. With fiercer shouts his lingering troops he fires, nor yields a step, nor from his post retires. So watchful shepherds strive to force, in vain, the hungry lion from a carcass slain. Even yet Patroclus had he borne away, and all the glories of the extended day, had not high Juno from the realms of air, secret dispatched her trusty messenger. The various goddess of the showery bow, shot in a whirlwind to the shore below. To great Achilles at his ships she came, And thus began the many-colored dame. Rise, son of Peleus. Rise, divinely brave. Assist the combat and Patroclus save. For him the slaughter to the fleet they spread, and fall by mutual wounds around the dead. To drag him back to Troy the foe contends, nor with his death the rage of Hector ends. A prey to dogs he dooms the course to lie, and marks the place to fix his head on high. Rise and prevent, if yet you think of fame, thy friend's disgrace, thy own eternal shame. Who sends thee, goddess, from the ethereal skies? Achilles thus, and Iris thus replies. I come, Pelides, from the queen of Jove, the immortal empress of the realms above. Unknown to him who sits remote on high, unknown to all the synod of the sky. Thou comest in vain, he cries, with fury warmed. Arms I have none, and can I fight unarmed? Unwilling as I am, of force I stay, till Thetis bring me at the dawn of day Vulcanian arms. What other can I wield, except the mighty Telamonian shield? That, in my friend's defense, has Ajax spread, while his strong lance around him heaps the dead. The gallant chief defends Menoetius' son, and does what his Achilles should have done. Thy want of arms, said Iris, well we know, but though unarmed, yet clad in terrors, go. Let but Achilles o'er yon trench appear, proud Troy shall tremble, and consent to fear. Greece from one glance of that tremendous eye, shall take new courage, and disdain to fly. She spoke and passed in air. The hero rose, her aegis Pallas o'er his shoulder throws. Around his brows a golden cloud she spread. A stream of glory flamed above his head, as when from some beleaguered town arise the smokes, high curling to the shaded skies, seen from some island, o'er the main afar, when men distressed hang out the sign of war winky face. Soon as the sun in ocean hides his rays, thick on the hills the flaming beacons blaze. With long projected beams the seas are bright, and heaven's high arch reflects the ruddy light. So from Achilles' head the splendors rise, reflecting blaze on blaze against the skies. Forth marched the chief, and distant from the crowd, high on the rampart raised his voice aloud. With her own shout Minerva swells the sound. Troy starts astonished, and the shores rebound, as the loud trumpet's brazen mouth from far, with shrilling clangor sounds the alarm of war. Struck from the walls, the echoes float on high, and the round bulwarks and thick towers reply. So high his brazen voice the hero reared, hosts dropped their arms, and trembled as they heard. And back the chariots roll, and coursers bound, and steeds and men lie mingled on the ground. Aghast they see the living lightnings play, and turn their eyeballs from the flashing ray. Thrice from the trench his dreadful voice he raised, and thrice they fled, confounded and amazed. 12 in the tumult wedged, untimely rushed, on their own spears, by their own chariots crushed, while, shielded from the darts, the Greeks obtain the long-contended carcass of the slain. A lofty bier the breathless warrior bears. Around, his sad companions melt in tears. But chief Achilles, bending down his head, pours unavailing sorrows o'er the dead, whom late triumphant, with his steeds and car, he sent refulgent to the field of war. Unhappy change! Now senseless, pale he found, stretched forth, and gashed with many a gaping wound. Meantime, unwearied with his heavenly way, in ocean's waves the unwilling light of day quenched his red orb, at Juno's high command, and from their labors eased the Achaean band. The fright Trojans, panting from the war, their steeds unharnessed from the weary car. A sudden council called, each chief appeared, in haste and standing, for to sit they feared. 'Twas now no season for prolonged debate. They saw Achilles, and in him their fate. Silent they stood, Polydamas at last, skilled to discern the future by the past. The son of Panthus thus expressed his fears, the friend of Hector, and of equal years. The selfsame night to both a being gave, one wise in counsel, one in action brave. In free debate, my friends, your sentence speak, For me, I move before the morning break, to raise our camp. Too dangerous here our post, far from Troy walls and on a naked coast. I deemed not Greece so dreadful while engaged. In mutual feuds her king and hero raged. Then, while we hoped our armies might prevail, we boldly camped beside 1,000 sail. I dread Pelides now, his rage of mind not long continues to the shores confined, nor to the fields where long in equal fray contending nations won and lost the day. For Troy, shall henceforth be the strife, and the hard contest not for fame but life. Haste then to Ilion while the favoring night detains these terrors, keeps that arm from fight. If but the morrow's sun behold us here, that arm, those terrors we shall feel, not fear, and hearts that now disdain shall leap with joy, if heaven permit them then to enter Troy. Let not my fatal prophecy be true, nor what I tremble but to think ensue. Whatever be our fate, yet let us try what force of thought and reason can supply. Let us on counsel for our guard depend. The town her gates and bulwarks shall defend. When morning dawns, our well-appointed powers, arrayed in arms, shall line the lofty towers. Let the fierce hero then, when fury calls, vent his mad vengeance on our rocky walls, or fetch 1,000 circles round the plain, till his spent coursers seek the fleet again. So may his rage be tired, and labored down, and dogs shall tear him ere he sack the town. Return, said Hector, fired with stern disdain. What, coop whole armies in our walls again? Was't not enough, ye valiant warriors, say? 9 years imprisoned in those towers ye lay? Wide o'er the world was Ilion famed of old, for brass exhaustless, and for mines of gold. But while inglorious in her walls we stayed, sunk were her treasures, and her stores decayed. The Phrygians now her scattered spoils enjoy, and proud Maeonia wastes the fruits of Troy. Great Jove at length my arms to conquest calls, and shuts the Grecians in their wooden walls. Darest thou dispirit whom the gods incite? Flies any Trojan? I shall stop his flight. To better counsel then attention lend. Take due refreshment and the watch attend. If there be one whose riches cost him care, forth let him bring them for the troops to share. 'Tis better generously bestowed on those, than left the plunder of our country's foes. Soon as the morn the purple orient warms, fierce on yon navy will we pour our arms. If great Achilles rise in all his might, his be the danger, I shall stand the fight. Honor, ye gods, or let me gain or give, and live he glorious, whosoe'er shall live. Mars is our common lord, alike to all, and oft the victor triumphs, but to fall. The shouting host in loud applauses joined, so Pallas robbed the many of their mind, to their own sense condemned and left to choose the worst advice the better to refuse. While the long night extends her sable reign, around Patroclus mourned the Grecian train. Stern in superior grief Pelides stood. Those slaughtering arms, so used to bathe in blood, now clasp his clay-cold limbs, then gushing start. The tears and sighs burst from his swelling heart. The lion thus, with dreadful anguish stung, roars through the desert, and demands his young. When the grim savage, to his rifled den, too late returning, snuffs the track of men, and o'er the valleys and o'er the forest bounds, his clamorous grief the bellowing wood resounds. So grieves Achilles, and impetuous, vents to all his myrmidons his loud laments. In what vain promise, gods, did I engage, when to console Menoetius' feeble age, I vowed his much-loved offspring to restore, charged with rich spoils to fair Opuntia's shore? 252. But mighty Jove cuts short with just disdain the long, long views of poor designing man. One fate the warrior and the friend shall strike, and Troy's black sands must drink our blood alike. Me too a wretched mother shall deplore, an aged father never see me more. Yet, my Patroclus, yet a space I stay, then swift pursue thee on the darksome way. Ere thy dear relics in the grave are laid, shall Hector's head be offered to thy shade, that, with his arms, shall hang before thy shrine. And 12, the noblest of the Trojan line, sacred to vengeance, by this hand expire, their lives effused around thy flaming pyre. Thus let me lie till then, thus closely pressed, bathe thy cold face, and sob upon thy breast, while Trojan captives hear thy mourners stay, weep all the night and murmur all the day, spoils of my arms and thine. When, wasting wide, our swords kept time, and conquered side by side, he spoke, and bade the sad attendants round cleanse the pale corse, and wash each honored wound. A massy cauldron of stupendous frame they brought, and placed it o'er the rising flame. Then heaped the lighted wood. The flame divides beneath the vase and climbs around the sides. In its wide womb they pour the rushing stream. The boiling water bubbles to the brim. The body then they bathe with pious toil, embalm the wounds, anoint the limbs with oil, high on a bed of state extended laid, and decent covered with a linen shade. Last o'er the dead the milk-white veil they threw, that done, their sorrows and their sighs renew. Meanwhile to Juno in the realms above, his wife and sister, spoke almighty Jove. At last thy will prevails, great Peleus' son, rises in arms. Such grace thy Greeks have won. Say, for I know not, is their race divine, and thou the mother of that martial line? What words are these? The imperial dame replies, while anger flashed from her majestic eyes. Succor like this a mortal arm might lend, and such success mere human wit attend. And shall not I, the second power above, heaven's queen, and consort of the thundering Jove, say, shall not I one nation's fate command, not wreak my vengeance on one guilty land? Illustration. Tripod. So they, meanwhile the silver-footed dame, reached the Vulcanian dome, eternal frame, high eminent amid the works divine, where heaven's far-beaming brazen mansions shine. There the lame architect the goddess found, obscure in smoke, his forges flaming round, while bathed in sweat from fire to fire he flew, and puffing loud, the roaring billows blew. That day no common task his labor claimed, full 20 tripods for his hall he framed, that placed on living wheels of massy gold, wondrous to tell, instinct with spirit rolled, from place to place around the blessed abodes, self-moved, obedient to the beck of gods, for their fair handles now, o'erwrought with flowers, in molds prepared the glowing ore he pours, just as responsive to his thought the frame, stood prompt to move, the azure goddess came, Charis, his spouse, a grace divinely fair, with purple fillets round her braided hair, observed her entering. Her soft hand she pressed, and, smiling, thus the watery queen addressed, "What goddess this unusual favor draws? All hail and welcome, whatsoe'er the cause. Till now a stranger in a happy hour. Approach, and taste the dainties of the bower. High on a throne, with stars of silver graced, and various artifice the queen she placed, a footstool at her feet. Then calling, said, Vulcan, draw near. 'Tis Thetis asks your aid. Thetis, replied the god, our powers may claim, an ever dear, an ever-honored name. When my proud mother hurled me from the sky, my awkward form, it seems, displeased her eye. She and Eurynomy my griefs redressed, and soft received me on their silver breast. Even then these arts employed my infant thought. Chains, bracelets, pendants, all their toys I wrought. 9 years kept secret in the dark abode. Secure I lay, concealed from man and God. Deep in a caverned rock my days were led. The rushing ocean murmured o'er my head. Now, since her presence glads our mansion, say, for such desert what service can I pay? Vouchsafe, O Thetis, at our board to share the genial rites and hospitable fare, while I the labors of the forge forego, and bid the roaring bellows cease to blow. Then from his anvil the lame artist rose. Wide with distorted legs oblique he goes, and stills the bellows and, in order laid, locks in their chests his instruments of trade. Then with a sponge the sooty workman dressed, his brawny arms embrowned, and hairy breast, with his huge scepter graced, and red attire, came halting forth the sovereign of the fire. The monarch steps 2 female forms uphold, that moved and breathed in animated gold, to whom was voice and sense and science given, of works divine. Such wonders are in heaven. On these supported with unequal gait, he reached the throne where pensive Thetis sate. There placed beside her on the shining frame, he thus addressed the silver-footed dame. Thee welcome, goddess, what occasion calls so long a stranger to these honored walls? 'Tis thine, fair Thetis, the command to lay, and Vulcan's joy and duty to obey. To whom the mournful mother thus replies. The crystal drops stood trembling in her eyes. O Vulcan, say, was ever breast divine, so pierced with sorrows, so o'erwhelmed as mine? Of all the goddesses did Jove prepare for Thetis only such a weight of care. I of all the watery race, by force subjected to a man's embrace, who, sinking now with age and sorrow, pays the mighty fine imposed on length of days. Sprung from my bed, a godlike hero came, the bravest sure that ever bore the name. Like some fair plant beneath my careful hand, he grew, he flourished, and adorned the land. To Troy I sent him, but his native shore never, never, shall receive him more. Even while he lives, he wastes with secret woe winky face. Nor I, a goddess, can retard the blow. Robbed of the prize the Grecian suffrage gave, the king of nations forced his royal slave. For this he grieved, and, till the Greeks oppressed, required his arm, he sorrowed unredressed. Large gifts they promise and their elders send. In vain he arms not but permits his friend his arms, his steeds, his forces to employ. He marches, combats, almost conquers Troy. Then slain by Phoebus, Hector had the name, at once resigns his armor, life, and fame. But thou, in pity, by my prayer be won. Grace with immortal arms this short-lived son, and to the field in martial pomp restore, to shine with glory, till he shines no more. To her the artist god, thy griefs resign, secure what Vulcan can is ever thine. O could I hide him from the fates as well, or with these hands the cruel stroke repel, as I shall forge most envied arms, the gaze of wondering ages, and the world's amaze. Thus having said, the father of the fires, to the black labors of his forge retires. Soon as he bade them blow, the bellows turned their iron mouths, and where the furnace burned, resounding breathed. At once the blast expires, and 20 forges catch at once the fires. Just as the god directs, now loud, now low, they raise a tempest, or they gently blow. In hissing flames huge silver bars are rolled, and stubborn brass, and tin, and solid gold. Before, deep fixed, the eternal anvils stand. The ponderous hammer loads his better hand. His left with tongs turns the vexed metal round, and thick, strong strokes the doubling vaults rebound. Then first he formed the immense and solid shield. Rich various artifice emblazed the field. Its utmost verge a threefold circle bound wink with a frown 253. A silver chain suspends the massy round. 5 ample plates the broad expanse compose, and godlike labors on the surface rose. There shone the image of the mastermind. Their earth, their heaven, their ocean he designed. The unwearied sun, the moon completely round, the starry lights that heaven's high convex crowned, the Pleiades, Hyads with the northern team, and great Orion's more refulgent beam, to which, around the axle of the sky, the bear, revolving, points his golden eye, still shines exalted on the ethereal plain, nor bathes his blazing forehead in the main. 2 cities radiant on the shield appear, the image one of peace and one of war. Here sacred pomp and genial feast delight, and solemn dance and hymeneal rite. Along the street the new-made brides are led, with torches flaming, to the nuptial bed, the youthful dancers in a circle bound, to the soft flute and cithern's silver sound. Through the fair streets the matrons in a row stand in their porches and enjoy the show. There in the forum swarm a numerous train, the subject of debate, a townsman slain. One pleads the fine discharged, which one denied, and bade the public and the laws decide. The witness is produced on either hand. For this or that the partial people stand. The appointed heralds still the noisy bands, and form a ring with scepters in their hands. On seats of stone, within the sacred place, 254, the reverend elders nodded o'er the case. Alternate each the attesting scepter took, and rising solemn each his sentence spoke. 2 golden talents lay amidst, in sight, the prize of him who best adjudged the right. Another part, a prospect differing far, 255, glowed with refulgent arms and horrid war. 2 mighty hosts a leaguered town embrace, and one would pillage, one would burn the place. Meantime the townsmen, armed with silent care, a secret ambush on the foe prepare. Their wives, their children, and the watchful band of trembling parents on the turrets stand. They march, by Pallas and by Mars made bold. Gold were the gods, their radiant garments gold, and gold their armor. These the squadron led, august, divine, superior by the head. A place for ambush fit they found and stood, covered with shields, beside a silver flood. 2 spies at distance lurk, and watchful seem, if sheep or oxen seek the winding stream. Soon the white flocks proceeded o'er the plains, and steers slow-moving, and 2 shepherd swains. Behind them piping on their reeds they go, nor fear an ambush, nor suspect a foe. In arms the glittering squadron rising round, rush sudden. Hills of slaughter heap the ground. Whole flocks and herds lie bleeding on the plains, and, all amidst them, dead, the shepherd swains. The bellowing oxen the besiegers hear. They rise, take horse, approach and meet the war. They fight, they fall, beside the silver flood. The waving silver seemed to blush with blood. Their tumult, their contention stood confessed. One reared a dagger at a captive's breast. One held a living foe that freshly bled, with new-made wounds. Another dragged a dead. Now here, now there, the carcasses they tore. Fate stalked amidst them, grim with human gore. And the whole war came out, and met the eye, and each bold figure seemed to live or die. A field deep furrowed next the god designed, 256. The 3rd time labored by the sweating hind. The shining shares full many ploughmen guide, and turn their crooked yokes on every side. Still as at either end they will around, the master meets them with his goblet crowned. The hearty draught rewards, renews their toil. Then back the turning plowshares cleave the soil. Behind, the rising earth in ridges rolled, and sable looked, though formed of molten gold. Another field rose high with waving grain. With bended sickles stand the reaper train. Here stretched in ranks the levelled swarths are found. Sheaves heaped on sheaves here thicken up the ground. With sweeping stroke the mowers strow the lands. The gatherers follow, and collect in bands. And last the children in whose arms are born. Too short to gripe them, the brown sheaves of corn. The rustic monarch of the field descries. With silent glee, the heaps around him rise. A ready banquet on the turf is laid, beneath an ample oak's expanded shade. The victim ox the sturdy youth prepare. The reaper's due repast the woman's care. Next, ripe in yellow gold, a vineyard shines, bent with the ponderous harvest of its vines. A deeper dye the dangling clusters show, and curled on silver props, in order glow. A darker metal mixed entrenched the place, and pails of glittering tin the enclosure grace. To this one pathway gently winding leads, where march a train with baskets on their heads. Fair maids and blooming youths, that smiling bear the purple product of the autumnal year. To these a youth awakes the warbling strings, whose tender lay the fate of Linus sings. In measured dance behind him move the train, tune soft the voice, and answer to the strain. Here herds of oxen march, erect and bold, rear high their horns, and seem to low in gold, and speed to meadows on whose sounding shores a rapid torrent through the rushes roars. For golden herdsmen as their guardians stand, and 9 sour dogs complete the rustic band. 2 lions rushing from the wood appeared, and seized a bull, the master of the herd. He roared. In vain the dogs, the men withstood. They tore his flesh, and drank his sable blood. The dogs, oft cheered in vain, desert the prey, dread the grim terrors, and at distance bay. Next this, the eye the art of Vulcan leads, deep through fair forests, and a length of meads, and stalls and folds, and scattered cots between, and fleecy flocks that whiten all the scene. A figured dance succeeds, such once was seen, in lofty Knossos for the Cretan queen, formed by Daedalian art, a comely band, of youths and maidens, bounding hand in hand. The maids in soft samars of linen dressed, the youths all graceful in the glossy vest. Of those the locks with flowery wreath enrolled, of these the sides adorned with swords of gold, that glittering gay from silver belts depend. Now all at once they rise, at once descend, with well-taught feet, now shape in oblique ways, confusedly regular the moving maze, now forth at once, too swift for sight, they spring, and undistinguished blend the flying ring. So whirls a wheel in giddy circle tossed, and, rapid as it runs, the single spokes are lost. The gazing multitudes admire around, 2 active tumblers in the center bound. Now high, now low, their pliant limbs they bend, and general songs the sprightly revel end. Thus the broad shield complete the artist crowned, with his last hand, and poured the ocean round. In living silver seemed the waves to roll, and beat the buckler's verge, and bound the whole. This done, whatever a warrior's use requires, he forged. The cuirass that outshone the fires, the greaves of ductile tin, the helm impressed, with various sculpture and the golden crest. At Thetis' feet the finished labor lay. She, as a falcon cuts the aerial way, swift from Olympus' snowy summit flies, and bears the blazing present through the skies. 257. Book 19. Argument. The reconciliation of Achilles and Agamemnon. Thetis brings to her son the armor made by Vulcan. She preserves the body of his friend from corruption, and commands him to assemble the army, to declare his resentment at an end. Agamemnon and Achilles are solemnly reconciled. The speeches, presents, and ceremonies on that occasion. Achilles is with great difficulty persuaded to refrain from the battle till the troops have refreshed themselves by the advice of Ulysses. The presents are conveyed to the tent of Achilles, where Briseis laments over the body of Patroclus. The hero obstinately refuses all repast, and gives himself up to lamentations for his friend. Minerva descends to strengthen him, by the order of Jupiter. He arms for the fight, his appearance described. He addresses himself to his horses, and reproaches them with the death of Patroclus. One of them is miraculously endued with voice, and inspired to prophesy his fate. But the hero, not astonished by that prodigy, rushes with fury to the combat. The 30th day. The scene is on the seashore, soon as Aurora heaved her orient head. Above the waves, that blushed with early red, with newborn day to gladden mortal sight, and gild the courts of heaven with sacred light. The immortal arms the goddess mother bears, swift to her son she finds in tears, stretched o'er Patroclus' corse, while all the rest, their sovereign's sorrows in their own expressed. A ray divine her heavenly presence shed, and thus, his hand soft touching, Thetis said, "Suppress, my son, this rage of grief, and know, it was not man, but heaven, that gave the blow. Behold what arms by Vulcan are bestowed, arms worthy thee, or fit to grace a god." Then drops the radiant burden on the ground. Clang the strong arms and ring the shores around. Back shrink the Myrmidons with dread surprise, and from the broad effulgence turn their eyes. Unmoved the hero kindles at the show, and feels with rage divine his bosom glow. From his fierce eyeballs living flames expire, and flash incessant like a stream of fire. He turns the radiant gift, and feeds his mind on all the immortal artist had designed. Goddess, he cried, these glorious arms that shine, with matchless art, confess the hand divine. Now to the bloody battle let me bend, but the relics of my slaughtered friend, in those wide wounds through which his spirit fled, shall flies, and worms obscene, pollute the dead, that unavailing care be laid aside. The azure goddess to her son replied, whole years untouched, uninjured shall remain, fresh as in life, the carcass of the slain. But go, Achilles, as affairs require, before the Grecian peers renounce thine ire, then uncontrolled in boundless war engage, and heaven with strength supply the mighty rage. Then in the nostrils of the slain she poured nectareous drops, and rich ambrosia showered o'er all the course. The flies forbid their prey, untouched it rests, and sacred from decay. Achilles to the strand obedient went, the shores resounded with the voice he sent. The heroes heard, and all the naval train, that tend the ships, or guide them o'er the main. Alarmed, transported, at the well-known sound, frequent and full, the great assembly crowned, studious to see the terror of the plain, long lost to battle, shine in arms again. Tydides and Ulysses first appear, lame with their wounds and leaning on the spear. These on the sacred seats of council placed. The king of men, Atrides, came the last. He too sore wounded by Agenor's son. Achilles, rising in the midst, begun. O monarch, better far had been the fate of thee, of me, of all the Grecian state, if ere the day when by mad passion swayed, rash we contended for the black-eyed maid, preventing Dian had dispatched her dart, and shot the shining mischief to the heart. Then many a hero had not pressed the shore, nor Troy's glad fields been fattened with our gore. Long, long shall Greece the woes we caused bewail, and sad posterity repeat the tale. But this, no more the subject of debate, is past, forgotten, and resigned to fate. Why should, alas, a mortal man as I, burn with a fury that can never die? Here then my anger ends. Let war succeed, and even as Greece has bled, let Ilion bleed. Now call the hosts and try if in our sight Troy yet shall dare to camp a second night. I deem, their mightiest, when this arm he knows, shall scape with transport, and with joy repose. He said, his finished wrath with loud acclaim. The Greeks accept and shout Pelides' name. When thus, not rising from his lofty throne, in state unmoved, the king of men begun. Hear me, ye sons of Greece, with silence here, and grant your monarch an impartial ear. Awhile your loud, untimely joy suspend, and let your rash, injurious clamors end. Unruly murmurs, or ill-timed applause, wrong the best speaker and the justest cause. Nor charge on me, ye Greeks, the dire debate. No, angry Jove and all-compelling fate, with fell Erinnys urged my wrath that day, when from Achilles' arms I forced the prey. What then could I against the will of heaven? Not by myself, but vengeful ate driven. She, Jove's dread daughter, fated to infest the race of mortals, entered in my breast. Not on the ground that haughty fury treads, but prints her lofty footsteps on the heads of mighty men, inflicting as she goes long festering wounds, inextricable woes. Of old, she stalked amid the bright abodes, and Jove himself, the sire of men and gods, the world's great ruler, felt her venomed dart, deceived by Juno's wiles and female art. For when Alcmena's 9 long months were run, and Jove expected his immortal son, to gods and goddesses the unruly joy he showed, and vaunted of his matchless boy. From us, he said, this day an infant springs, fated to rule, and born a king of kings. Saturnia asked an oath, to vouch the truth, and fix dominion on the favored youth. The thunderer, unsuspicious of the fraud, pronounced those solemn words that bind a god. The joyful goddess, from Olympus' height, swift to Achaean Argos bent her flight. Scarce 7 moons gone, lay Sthenelus' wife. She pushed her lingering infant into life. Her charms Alcmena's coming labors stay, and stop the babe just issuing to the day. Then bids Saturnius bear his oath in mind. A youth, said she, of Jove's immortal kind, is this day born. From Sthenelus he springs, and claims thy promise to be king of kings. Grief seized the thunderer, by his oath engaged. Stung to the soul he sorrowed, and he raged. From his ambrosial head, where perched she sate, he snatched the fury goddess of debate. The dread, the irrevocable oath he swore, the immortal seats should ne'er behold her more, and whirled her headlong down, for ever driven, from bright Olympus and the starry heaven. Thence on the nether world the fury fell, ordained with man's contentious race to dwell. Full oft the god his son's hard toils bemoaned, cursed the dire fury, and in secret groaned. 258. Even thus, like Jove himself, was I misled, while raging Hector heaped our camps with dead. What can the errors of my rage atone? My martial troops, my treasures are thy own. This instant from the navy shall be sent whatever Ulysses promised at thy tent. But thou, appeased, propitious to our prayer, resume thy arms, and shine again in war. O King of nations, whose superior sway returns Achilles, all our hosts obey. To keep or send the presents, be thy care. To us, 'tis equal, all we ask is war. While yet we talk or but an instant shun the fight, our glorious work remains undone. Let every Greek, who sees my spear confound the Trojan ranks and deal destruction round. With emulation what I act survey, and learn from thence the business of the day. The son of Peleus thus, and thus replies. The great in counsels, Ithacus the wise. Though godlike, thou art by no toils oppressed, at least our armies claim repast and rest. Long and laborious must the combat be, when by the gods inspired and led by thee. Strength is derived from spirits and from blood, and those augment by generous wine and food. What boastful son of war, without that stay, can last a hero through a single day? Courage may prompt, but, ebbing out his strength, mere unsupported man must yield at length. Shrunk with dry famine and with toils declined, the drooping body will desert the mind. But built anew with strength-conferring fare, with limbs and soul untamed, he tires a war. Dismiss the people then and give command, with strong repast to hearten every band. But let the presents to Achilles made, in full assembly of all Greece be laid. The king of men shall rise in public sight, and solemn swear, observant of the rite, that, spotless, as she came, the maid removes, pure from his arms, and guiltless of his loves. That done, a sumptuous banquet shall be made, and the full price of injured honor paid. Stretch not henceforth, O prince, thy sovereign might, beyond the bounds of reason and of right. 'Tis the chief praise that e'er to kings belonged, to right with justice whom with power they wronged. To him the monarch, just is thy decree, thy words give joy, and wisdom breathes in thee. Each due atonement gladly I prepare, and heaven regard me as I justly swear. Here then a while let Greece assembled stay, nor great Achilles grudge this short delay, till from the fleet our presence be conveyed, and Jove attesting the firm compact made. A train of noble youths the charge shall bear, these to select, Ulysses, be thy care. In order ranked let all our gifts appear, and the fair train of captives close the rear. Talthybius shall the victim bore convey, sacred to Jove, and yon bright orb of day. For this, the stern Aeacides replies, some less important season may suffice, when the stern fury of the war is o'er, and wrath extinguished, burns my breast no more. By Hector slain, their faces to the sky, all grim with gaping wounds, our heroes lie, those called to war. and might my voice incite. Now, this instant, shall commence the fight. Then, when the day's complete, let generous bowls, and copious banquets, glad your weary souls. Let not my palate know the taste of food, till my insatiate rage be cloyed with blood. Pale lies my friend, with wounds disfigured o'er, and his cold feet are pointed to the door. Revenge is all my soul, no meaner care, interest or thought has room to harbor there. Destruction be my feast, and mortal wounds, and scenes of blood, and agonizing sounds. O first of Greeks, Ulysses thus rejoined, the best and bravest of the warrior kind. Thy praise it is in dreadful camps to shine, but old experience and calm wisdom mine. Then hear my counsel, and to reason yield. The bravest soon are satiate of the field. Though vast the heaps that strow the crimson plain, the bloody harvest brings but little gain. The scale of conquest ever wavering lies. Great Jove but turns it, and the victor dies. The great, the bold, by thousands daily fall, and endless were the grief, to weep for all. Eternal sorrows what avails to shed? Greece honors not with solemn fasts the dead. Enough when death demands the brave to pay the tribute of a melancholy day. One chief with patience to the grave resigned, our care devolves on others left behind. Let generous food supplies of strength produce. Let rising spirits flow from sprightly juice. Let their warm heads with scenes of battle glow, and pour new furies on the feebler foe. Yet a short interval, and none shall dare expect a second summons to the war. Who waits for that, the dire effects shall find, if trembling in the ships he lags behind. Embodied to the battle let us bend, and all at once on haughty Troy descend. And now the delegates Ulysses sent, to bear the presents from the royal tent. The sons of Nestor, Phyleus valiant heir, Thias and Marion thunderbolts of war, with Lycomedes of Creontian strain, and Melanippus, formed the chosen train. Swift as the word was given, the youths obeyed. Twice 10 bright vases in the midst they laid. A row of 6 fair tripods then succeeds, and twice the number of high-bounding steeds. 7 captives next a lovely line compose. The 8th Briseis, like the blooming rose, closed the bright band great Ithacus before. First of the train the golden talents bore. The rest in public view the chiefs dispose. A splendid scene. Then Agamemnon rose. The boar Talthybius held. The Grecian lord drew the broad cutlass sheathed beside his sword. The stubborn bristles from the victim's brow he crops, and offering meditates his vow. His hands uplifted to the attesting skies. On heaven's broad marble roof were fixed his eyes. The solemn words a deep attention draw, and Greece around sat thrilled with sacred awe. Witness thou first, thou greatest power above, all good, all wise and all surveying Jove, and Mother Earth, and heaven's revolving light, and ye, fell furies of the realms of night, who rule the dead, and horrid woes prepare, for perjured kings, and all who falsely swear. The black-eyed maid inviolate removes, pure and unconscious of my manly loves. If this be false, heaven all its vengeance shed, and levelled thunder strike my guilty head. With that, his weapon deep inflicts the wound. The bleeding savage tumbles to the ground. The sacred herald rolls the victim slain, a feast for fish into the foaming main. Then thus Achilles, hear ye Greeks, and know, whatever we feel, 'tis Jove inflicts the woe. Not else Atrides could our rage inflame, nor from my arms, unwilling, force the dame. 'Twas Jove's high will alone, O Erling all, that doomed our strife and doomed the Greeks to fall. Go then, ye chiefs, indulge the genial rite. Achilles waits ye, and expects the fight. The speedy council at his word adjourned. To their black vessels all the Greeks returned. Achilles sought his tent. His train before marched onward, bending with the gifts they bore. Those in the tents the squires industrious spread. The foaming coursers to the stalls they led. To their new seats the female captives move. Briseis, radiant as the queen of love, slow as she passed, beheld with sad survey, where, gashed with cruel wounds, Patroclus lay. Prone on the body fell the heavenly fair, beat her sad breast, and tore her golden hair. All beautiful in grief, her humid eyes, shining with tears she lifts, and thus she cries, "Ah, youth forever dear, forever kind, once tender friend of my distracted mind. I left thee fresh in life, in beauty gay, now find thee cold, inanimate clay. What woes my wretched race of life attend? Sorrows on sorrows, never doomed to end. The first loved consort of my virgin bed. Before these eyes in fatal battle bled. My 3 brave brothers in one mournful day. All trod the dark, irremediable way. Thy friendly hand upreared me from the plain, and dried my sorrows for a husband slain. Achilles' care you promised I should prove, the first, the dearest partner of his love. That rights divine should ratify the band, and make me empress in his native land. Accept these grateful tears, for thee they flow, for thee, that ever felt another's woe. Her sister captives echoed groan for groan, nor mourned Patroclus' fortunes, but their own. The leaders pressed the chief on every side. Unmoved he heard them, and with sighs denied. If yet Achilles have a friend whose care is bent to please him, this request forbear. Till yonder sun descend, let me pay to grief and anguish one abstemious day. He spoke, and from the warriors turned his face. Yet still the brother kings of Atreus' race, Nestor, Idomeneus, Ulysses sage, and Phoenix, strive to calm his grief and rage. His rage they calm not, nor his grief control. He groans, he raves, he sorrows from his soul. Thou too, Patroclus, thus his heart he vents. Once spread the inviting banquet in our tents. Thy sweet society, thy winning care, once stayed Achilles, rushing to the war. But now, alas, to death's cold arms resigned. What banquet but revenge can glad my mind? What greater sorrow could afflict my breast? What more if hoary Peleus were deceased? Who now, perhaps, in Phthia dreads to hear his son's sad fate, and drops a tender tear. What more, should Neoptolemus the brave, my only offspring, sink into the grave? If yet that offspring lives, I distant far, of all neglectful, wage a hateful war. I could not this cruel stroke attend. Fate claimed Achilles, but might spare his friend. I hoped Patroclus might survive to rear my tender orphan with a parent's care. From Scyros I'll conduct him o'er the main, and glad his eyes with his paternal reign, the lofty palace and the large domain. For Peleus breathes no more the vital air, or drags a wretched life of age and care, but till the news of my sad fate invades his hastening soul, and sinks him to the shades. Sighing he said, his grief the heroes joined, each stole a tear for what he left behind. Their mingled grief the sire of heaven surveyed, and thus with pity to his blue-eyed maid, "Is then, Achilles, now no more thy care, and dost thou thus desert the great in war? Lo, where yon sails their canvas wings extend, all comfortless he sits, and wails his friend, ere thirst and want his forces have oppressed. Haste and infuse ambrosia in his breast." He spoke, and sudden at the word of Jove, shot the descending goddess from above. So swift through ether the shrill harpy springs, the wide air floating to her ample wings. To great Achilles she her flight addressed, and poured divine ambrosia in his breast. 259. With nectar sweet, refection of the gods. Then, swift ascending, sought the bright abodes. Now issued from the ships the warrior train, and like a deluge poured upon the plain, as when the piercing blasts of Boreas blow, and scatter o'er the fields the driving snow. From dusky clouds the fleecy winter flies, whose dazzling luster whitens all the skies. So helms succeeding helms, so shields from shields, catch the quick beams, and brighten all the fields. Broad glittering breastplates, spears with pointed rays, mix in one stream, reflecting blaze on blaze. Thick beats the center as the coursers bound. with splendor flame the skies, and laugh the fields around. Full in the midst, high towering o'er the rest, his limbs in arms divine Achilles dressed, arms which the Father of the fire bestowed, forged on the eternal anvils of the god. Grief and revenge his furious heart inspire, his glowing eyeballs roll with living fire. He grinds his teeth, and furious with delay, looks the embattled host, and hopes the bloody day. The silver cuishes first his thighs enfold, then o'er his breast was braced the hollow gold, the brazen sword a various baldric tied, that, starred with gems, hung glittering at his side, and, like the moon, the broad refulgent shield, blazed with long rays and gleamed athwart the field. So to night-wandering sailors, pale with fears, wide o'er the watery waste, a light appears, which on the far-seen mountain blazing high, streams from some lonely watchtower to the sky. With mournful eyes they gaze, and gaze again. Loud howls the storm, and drives them o'er the main. Next, his high head the helmet graced. Behind, the sweepy crest hung floating in the wind, like the red star that from his flaming hair shakes down diseases, pestilence, and war. So streamed the golden honors from his head, trembled the sparkling plumes, and the loose glories shed. The chief beholds himself with wondering eyes. His arms he poises, and his motions tries. Buoyed by some inward force, he seems to swim, and feels a pinion lifting every limb. And now he shakes his great paternal spear, ponderous and huge, which not a Greek could rear, from Pelion's cloudy top an ashen tire. Old Chiron felled, and shaped it for his sire, a spear which stern Achilles only wields, the death of heroes and the dread of fields. Automedon and Alcimus prepare, the immortal coursers, and the radiant car, the silver traces sweeping at their side winky face, their fiery mouths resplendent bridles tied, the ivory-studded reins, returned behind, waved o'er their backs, and to the chariot joined. The charioteer then whirled the lash around, and swift ascended at one active bound. All bright in heavenly arms, above his squire, Achilles mounts, and sets the field on fire. Not brighter Phoebus in the ethereal way, flames from his chariot, and restores the day. High o'er the host, all terrible he stands, and thunders to his steeds these dread commands. Xanthus and Balius, of Podarge's strain, unless ye boast that heavenly race in vain, be swift, be mindful of the load ye bear, and learn to make your master more your care. Through falling squadrons bear my slaughtering sword, nor, as ye left Patroclus, leave your lord. The generous Xanthus, as the words he said, seemed sensible of woe, and drooped his head. Trembling he stood before the golden wain, and bowed to dust the honors of his mane. When, strange to tell, so Juno willed, he broke eternal silence, and portentous spoke. Achilles, yes, this day at least we bear thy rage in safety through the files of war. But come it will, the fatal time must come. Not ours the fault, but God decrees thy doom. Not through our crime or slowness in the course fell thy Patroclus, but by heavenly force, the bright far-shooting God who gilds the day. Confessed we saw him, tore his arms away. No, could our swiftness o'er the winds prevail, or beat the pinions of the western gale, all were in vain. The fates thy death demand, due to a mortal and immortal hand. Then ceased forever by the Furies' tide, his fateful voice, the intrepid chief replied, with unabated rage. So let it be. Portents and prodigies are lost on me. I know my fate, to die to see no more my much-loved parents and my native shore. Enough, when heaven ordains, I sink in night. Now perish Troy, he said, and rushed to fight.